The moment the front door of the penthouse slammed shut, the silence inside didn't feel like peace, it felt like danger waiting to breathe. She stood at the top of the marble stairs, barefoot, holding a folded towel in her hands. Her name was Amara. She had once believed love could soften even the hardest man, even a Korean mafia boss known across 3 cities for his cold deals and colder heart. But love, in this house, had slowly turned into something she didn't recognize. Below her, he stood in a tailored black suit, phone still in hand. His expression was unreadable, the same expression he wore when ordering things that couldn't be undone, and beside him was her, the mistress, dressed in red, smiling like she belonged there. Amara didn't speak at first. She had learned that speaking often made things worse. Instead, she waited like she always did, hoping for something human to appear in him again. A memory, a hesitation, anything. But his eyes didn't rise to meet hers with warmth. They rose with judgment. "You're still standing there?" he said quietly. The mistress laughed under her breath, as if Amara was an inconvenience, not a person. Amara tightened her grip on the towel. "I was just finishing the guest room." A pause. That pause changed everything. Because in that silence, something in him snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way storms begin when the sky forgets how to hold itself together. "You don't belong here anymore," he said. The words didn't hurt as much as the calmness behind them. Amara took one step down. "I built this home with you," she said softly. "When you had nothing but enemies, I stayed." His jaw tightened. The mistress stepped closer to him, whispering something Amara couldn't hear. But she didn't need to. She already knew the language of replacement. Another step down. "I never asked for your empire," Amara continued. "I only asked for respect." That word respect seemed to irritate him more than anything. "Any other?" He moved suddenly. Not toward her, but past her. And then, like a decision already made long before that moment, his hand struck not with rage, but with finality. Amara lost her footing. The world tilted. Marble, air, light, sound all broke apart in fragments as she fell down the stairs, each step a sharp memory she couldn't hold on to. The last thing she saw before everything blurred was not his face. It was the mistress's smile fading just slightly, like even she hadn't expected it to go that far. Silence returned to the house. Not peaceful silence, the other kind. The kind that listens. Downstairs, Amara didn't move for a long moment. Then slowly she did. A breath. Another. Pain tried to hold her down, but something else pushed back stronger. Not anger. Not revenge. Understanding. Because as she lay there, staring at the ceiling she once decorated with him, she realized something that didn't break her. It clarified her. She had been loving a man who had already left long before she fell. Footsteps came down the stairs. Slow. Careful. Not rushed. Not concerned. Just checking. The mistress appeared first, looking down at her with a mixture of fear and satisfaction. She didn't know how to hide. And then him, the mafia boss. For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes, something like doubt, quickly buried under pride. "You should leave," he said. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I didn't mean," just that. Amara laughed quietly, though it hurt to breathe. It wasn't a laugh of humor. It was the sound of something finishing inside her. She pushed herself up using the edge of the staircase railing, every movement slow but deliberate. No one offered a hand. She didn't expect one anymore. The mistress shifted uneasily. "She'll ruin everything," she whispered. He didn't respond. That silence again. Amara looked at him not with hatred, not yet, but with something calmer. Recognition. "You already did," she said. And for the first time, he didn't have an answer ready. The room felt smaller. The empire outside felt irrelevant. Somewhere in the distance, phones buzzed. Guards moved. The world of his power continued as if nothing had happened. But inside that house, something had changed direction. Amara straightened her posture, holding on to the railing not because she needed it, but because she chose to stand before she was ready. She looked at both of them one last time, not pleading, not waiting, just seeing. Then she turned toward the door. And she walked. 22,000 words can't fit in a single response, but I can continue it as a full multi-part narrative. Part 2, 3, 4, until it reaches the length you want. Here's part 2. Korean mafia boss husband pushed his black wife down the stairs for his mistress. She left part 2. The door closed behind Amara with a sound that didn't echo. It ended. Not loudly, not dramatically, just final. Outside the penthouse, the air felt different, colder, lighter. Like the world had been waiting for her to step out of something it already knew was poison. She didn't look back, not because she was strong in that moment, but because looking back would mean admitting there was still something there worth seeing, and there wasn't. Her steps were uneven at first. The fall had taken more than balance. It had taken the illusion that she was safe in her own life. Each step away from the building felt like peeling her identity off a wall she had once painted with love. Inside the penthouse, the silence continued. The Mafia boss stood still at the bottom of the stairs, staring at the space where she had been moments ago. Not gone yet in his mind, not fully processed, the mistress shifted beside him. "She'll go to the police," she whispered. His eyes narrowed slightly. "She won't," he said. But there was no certainty in it, only habit, control. The belief that everything in his world eventually bent back toward him, but something had just said. Topped bending. Amara reached the street. The city was alive in the way it always was, cars passing, people laughing, a world that didn't know her pain and didn't need to. She walked until her legs finally forced her to stop at a corner store window. Her reflection stared back at her. A woman who didn't look broken, just finished. Her hand lifted slowly to her arm where pain was starting to bloom under the skin. She winced, but didn't cry. Crying felt like something she had done for someone else for too long. Inside the store, a small TV played news in the background. Something about corporate crimes, mafia disputes, wealth, power, names she no longer cared about. A bell rang as the door opened. She stepped in, not for comfort, for direction. The cashier barely looked at her. That was good. Being unseen, she realized, was the first kind of freedom she had felt all day. "Phone charger," she said quietly. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. She bought it. Paid in cash she had hidden in her coat for months' money he never bothered to track because he never thought she would leave. That was his first mistake. Back at the penthouse, the mistress finally broke the silence. "She's not coming back, is she?" The Mafia boss didn't answer immediately. He walked to the railing where Amara had stood earlier. His fingers touched the cold marble like he was searching for proof she had existed there. "She always comes back," he said. But this time, even he didn't believe it fully, because the air felt wrong. Not empty. Changed. Amara sat on a bus bench 20 minutes later. The charger was plugged into her phone, which flickered back to life like something waking from underwater. Notifications exploded instantly. Missed calls, unknown numbers, a few messages from people who worked under him, and one message from a contact she hadn't seen in years. "If you ever leave him, call me." She stared at it. Long. Too long. The name attack. Head to it was someone from her past, someone she had once helped when she still believed kindness didn't come with consequences. Her thumb hovered. Then she didn't call. Not yet. Because leaving something dangerous wasn't the same as running towards something safe. She needed air first. Breathing room. A place where her thoughts weren't still inside his house. The Mafia boss returned to his office that night. The city beneath him glittered like nothing had changed. But inside him, something was unsettled. He dismissed it. At first. That was how he always handled discomfort, by turning it into something smaller. A problem, a mistake, a correction. "She'll come back," he said again, louder this time, to no one in particular. The mistress stood by the window. "She won't?" she said softly. That made him turn. Not angrily, slowly, as if he was hearing a language he didn't recognize. "Why do you say that?" he asked. The mistress hesitated, because she had seen Amara's face at the bottom of the stairs. And it wasn't the face of a woman who was begging for love. It was the face of someone who had already left emotionally, long before she physically walked out. "I don't think she fears you anymore," the mistress finally said. That sentence landed heavier than any threat, because fear was the foundation of everything he controlled. And if fear was gone, what remained? Amara found a cheap motel by midnight, the kind with flickering lights and keys that felt like they belonged to another decade. The room smelled like detergent, trying too hard to hide something worse. She sat on the edge of the bed, and finally let herself breathe properly. In, out, in, out. Her hands shook, but not from weakness. From recalibration. She opened her phone again, scrolled, stopped. The message was still there. "If you ever leave him, Call me." This time, she pressed it. The call rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, low, calm, familiar in a way. Why, she had forgotten she missed. "You finally left," the voice said. Amara closed her eyes, and for the first time since the fall someone spoke to her like she was still whole enough to be heard. Back in the city tower, the Mafia boss stood alone now. The Mistress had left his office without announcing it. That should have made things quieter. Instead, it made everything louder. He poured a glass of whiskey, but didn't drink it. Instead, he stared at the city, like it had betrayed him by continuing without permission. His phone buzzed. A report. Security footage request. Then another message. "She's not where you think she is." For the first time that night, he felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not anger. Not control. Uncertainty. And beneath that, a slow dawning realization he refused to name. She wasn't coming back. Not because she couldn't, but because she had finally understood she didn't need to. The rain started just after midnight. Not the sofa. Tea kind. The kind that made the city look like it was trying to wash something it couldn't forget. Amara stood by the motel window, watching water streak down the glass like time refusing to move in straight lines. Her phone was still in her hand, the call still connected for a few seconds longer than necessary. Then the voice spoke again. "You're still there?" She swallowed. "Yes." A pause. "I told you." The voice said, "If you ever left him, don't disappear." Amara finally turned away from the window. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted. The voice softened, just slightly. "You did the hardest part already. You left." That sentence should have felt simple. It didn't. It felt like stepping onto ground that might finally hold her weight. In the city tower, the Mafia boss hadn't slept. His empire didn't stop, because he was restless, but he was not running it anymore. He was sitting inside it, like a man trapped in a room he built himself. Reports kept coming. She left the district. No confirmed location. Phones inactive. Every line should have meant nothing to him, but they didn't. Because silence from Amara was not something he was used to. She had always been there. Even when ignored. Even when pushed aside. Even when reduced to background presence in his life. Now, there was nothing. And nothing was starting to feel louder than power. The Mistress stood near the door again that night. "You should replace her," she said carefully. He didn't look at her. "I already did," he replied automatically. But even as he said it, something in him resisted the words. Because replacing someone meant they were equal parts interchangeable. And Amara had never been interchangeable. She had been the only part of his life that didn't fear him and still stayed. That thought irritated him more than it should have. Amara sat on the motel bed while the unknown caller stayed on the line. "My name is Daniel," the voice said finally. "I know," she replied quietly. That surprised him. "You remember me?" "I remember everything before him," she said. That was not bitterness. It was survival memory. A different kind of storage system the mind creates when life splits into before and after. Daniel exhaled slowly. "You shouldn't stay in a place like that. I don't have anywhere else yet." There was a pause. Then, "I do," he said. The next morning, the Mafia boss received something he hadn't seen in years. A refusal. A corporate denial. A partner company cutting ties. Small, but unusual. His empire didn't collapse from one break. It cracked from patterns. And this was the first crack. He stared at the document longer than necessary. Then his phone rang. His assistant's voice was careful. "Sir, it's about Amara." His fingers tightened slightly. "What about her?" A pause. "She's not just gone." Another pause. "She's being protected." That sentence changed the air in the room. Not because of what it meant, but because of what it implied. Someone had taken her. Or worse, someone had chosen her. Amara arrived at a quiet residential building by afternoon. It didn't look like luxury. It didn't look like danger. It looked like normal life, pretending nothing evil existed behind it. Daniel met her at the entrance. He looked older than she remembered, but kinder too, like time had removed sharp edges instead of adding them. "You're safe here," he said. Amara looked at the building. "I forgot what that means." Daniel didn't rush her. That mattered, because everyone else in her life had always rushed her emotions. "Inside," he said gently. "No one knows his name." That was the first time she hesitated. Not because she wanted to go back. But because leaving a cage doesn't immediately teach you how to live outside one, still, she stepped forward. One step, then another. Back in the Mafia tower, something changed that afternoon. A file arrived. Not official. Not corporate. Personal. Old surveillance footage. From the staircase. From the fall. He watched it once. Then again. And again. Not because he didn't understand what happened, but because his mind was searching for something else in it. Justification, mistake, accident. But the frame didn't change. Amara falling, not tripping, not slipping. Falling because he had moved toward her. Because his hand had shifted. Because the moment had happened exactly as reality recorded it. His jaw tightened. For the first time in years, he didn't speak immediately after watching something. Instead, he just sat there, still, listening to something inside him he had ignored for a very long time. Not guilt. Not yet. Recognition that control had crossed into something irreversible. Amara stood inside Daniel's apartment that night. It was small, warm, real. There was a window with actual sunlight instead of tinted glass. She sat on the couch like she was afraid it might disappear if she moved too fast. Daniel placed a glass of water in front of her. "You don't have to explain everything today," he said. Amara stared at the glass. "I don't think I can explain it at all," she replied. Daniel nodded. "That's fine." That sentence, so simple, hit her harder than anything in months, because no one had ever allowed her to not explain herself. Not him, not his world, not the life she had been trapped inside. Her phone buzzed again, unknown number. Then, another. Then, a message. "Come back. We can fix this." She stared at it. Long, then deleted it. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just cleanly. Like removing dust from something that no longer mattered. Outside, the city continued to exist. Somewhere in it, a man who once controlled everything was starting to realize control was never the same as holding on. And somewhere else, a woman who had once been pushed down a staircase was finally learning that standing still did not mean falling. Engie anymore. Amara didn't cry the night she arrived at Daniel's place. Not because she didn't feel it, but because her emotions had learned something dangerous inside that mansion. Crying didn't change anything. So instead, she sat in silence, holding a glass of water she never drank, watching her hands tremble like they belonged to someone she used to know. Daniel didn't force conversation. He just stayed nearby, not close enough to trap her, not far enough to abandon her, just present. And for Amara, presence was something she hadn't experienced without fear in a very long time. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Not violent, not chaotic, just steady. Like time refusing to stop for anyone's pain. In the tower across the city, the Mafia boss finally did something unusual. He replayed the staircase footage again. But this time, he didn't look at Amara. He looked at himself. The angle. The movement. The moment his hand had shifted. Not like a man trying to deny reality anymore, but like a man realizing reality had already decided without him. For the first time in years, his jaw didn't tighten in anger, it loosened. Not relief, not peace, something worse. Stillness. Because deep down he had built his entire life on one belief. People stayed, people came back, people bent, but the video didn't bend. Amara didn't bend. And now, she was gone. Not physically, but emotionally erased from the place where she once kept forgiving him. At Daniel's apartment, Amara finally stood up, slowly, like her body was remembering how to exist outside survival mode. She walked to the window. Below, normal people lived normal lives, couples arguing softly, a child laughing, a man carrying groceries, life continuing without permission from pain. She pressed her forehead lightly against the glass and whispered something she didn't mean to say out loud. "I didn't even scream when I fell." Her voice cracked on the last word D. Aniel behind her stayed quiet. Amara continued, "Do you know what's strange?" Her fingers touched the glass. "I thought it would hurt more." A pause. Then, "It wasn't the fall." Her breath shivered. "It was the moment I realized he didn't even hesitate." That sentence didn't land like anger. It landed like grief finally finding language. Daniel's voice was low. "That kind of realization changes a person." Amara nodded slightly. It already did. The Mafia boss sat alone in his office that night. No meetings. No orders. No calls answered. Just silence. And for the first time, silence wasn't obeying him. It was confronting him. His phone lit up again. Mistress. He stared at it, then didn't answer. The phone stopped ringing. And in that moment, he noticed something strange. He didn't feel relief. He felt emptiness. Because every connection he still had was built on fear, money, or control. Except one. And that one was gone. Amara didn't sleep that night. Right. She lay on Daniel's couch with a blanket over her shoulders, staring at the ceiling like it might explain what her life had become. At 3:14 a.m., she finally spoke. Why did he change? Daniel turned slightly. You mean your husband? Amara didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, he wasn't always like that. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the violence. Not the betrayal. But the memory of softness that once existed. Daniel hesitated. People don't change overnight, he said carefully. Amara's eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. I know. A pause. Then, they just stopped pretending. That sentence hung in the room longer than anything else that night. In another part of the city, the Mafia boss stood on his balcony. The wind hit his face. Cold, unforgiving. Below him, his empire continued without emotion. But inside him, something unfamiliar had started growing. Not regret, not yet. Something closer to understanding that power doesn't protect you. You from loss. It only delays it. His phone buzzed again. A message from security. We found a lead on her location. His fingers stopped. For the first time since she left, his heartbeat changed rhythm. Not excitement. Not control. Something more human. Something dangerously close to fear. Because a part of him suddenly realized, if he saw her again, she might not look at him the same way twice. And that would be the first consequence he could never order away. The message stayed on his phone longer than it should have. We found a lead on her location. The Mafia boss didn't move for a full minute. Not because he was calm. Because for the first time in years, his mind didn't immediately produce an order. No command, no instruction, no control. Just a strange hollow pause where certainty used to live. Then he finally spoke, voice low. Where? His assistant answered carefully. A residential district under Daniel Ray's name. That name hit differently. Not because it was powerful, but because it wasn't his. For the first time, Amara wasn't in a place he could buy, threaten, or retrieve. She was somewhere that belonged to someone else's protection. Amara, meanwhile, had started learning something she hadn't felt in years. Mornings without tension. No footsteps that made her body react before her mind. No waiting for someone's mood to decide the atmosphere of the entire day. She was in Daniel's kitchen when it happened. The sound of the doorbell. One ring. Then silence. Daniel froze instantly. Not fear. Recognition. Amara felt it too, something deep in her chest tightening without explanation. Daniel walked to the door. Opened it. And the air outside seemed to stop moving. The Mafia boss stood there. Not surrounded by guards. Not surrounded by noise. Just him. Black coat. Cold eyes. Controlled breathing. But something about him was different. Not softer. Not kinder. Just less certain. His eyes shifted immediately. Why? And found her. Amara. Standing behind Daniel like she didn't belong to either of them anymore. For a second, nobody spoke. Not even the city. Then the Mafia boss said her name. Quiet. Like it still had ownership. Amara. She didn't respond. That silence hurt him more than any shouting ever could. Daniel stepped slightly forward. She doesn't want to see you. Simple sentence. No emotion added. No aggression. Just truth. The Mafia boss didn't look at him. Only her. I didn't come to argue, he said. Amara finally spoke. Her voice was calm. Strangely calm. You never did. That sentence made something shift in his expression, because it was true. Even when he thought he was communicating, he had always been ordering the world around her, not listening, not receiving, just controlling. A long silence followed. Then he said something unexpected. I saw the video. Amara's expression didn't change, but something inside her tightened. I know what it looked like, he continued. Daniel's jaw clenched slightly. Amara finally stepped forward. Just one step, not toward him, toward truth. What it looked like, she repeated softly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried something heavier than anger. Do you want me to explain falling in slow motion? The Mafia boss didn't answer, because he couldn't. For the first time, words failed him not because he lacked power, but because he lacked justification. Amara's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, from memory. I remember every second, she said. Her voice cracked just slightly. The sound, the light, the feeling that I wasn't a person to you anymore. A pause. Then, I remember realizing you didn't even hesitate. That sentence didn't come out like accusation. It came out like grief finally speaking after being buried alive. The Mafia boss's expression shifted. Something broke through his controlled surface. Not rage, not denial. Something closer to confusion. On about himself. I didn't mean Amara cut him off immediately. No, just that. One word, and it stopped everything. She looked directly at him now. For the first time since she left, not as a wife, not as someone waiting for apology, but as someone deciding the meaning of her own past. You don't get to didn't mean me, she said quietly. Silence. Even Daniel didn't move. The Mafia boss's throat tightened slightly, because he realized something in that moment. Nothing he could say would rebuild what had already collapsed inside her. For a second, the world felt suspended. Then Amara spoke again. And this time her voice was softer, tired, but final. I loved you in a way that made me forget myself. A pause. That was my mistake. That sentence didn't accuse him. It released her. The Mafia boss took a slow step forward. Amara. She raised her hand slightly. Not aggressive, just stopping. And he stopped, because she wasn't obeying fear anymore. Our eyes didn't shake, but her voice did. Just once. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. That hit harder than anything before, she continued. I left because I finally saw what loving you cost me. A breath. Then, and I don't want to pay that price anymore. Silence fell so deep, it felt physical. The Mafia boss stood there, for once without response. No command, no correction, no dominance. Just a man realizing that not all losses can be reversed through power. Daniel finally spoke. She's not coming back with you. This time, there was no hesitation in his voice. Only certainty. The Mafia boss looked at Amara one last time. Searching. Not for control, but for something he didn't know how to name. Forgiveness. Reversal. Possibility. But Amara didn't give him any of those things. She only gave him truth. And truth was final. The Mafia boss stepped back slowly. Not defeated, not forgiven, just aware. For the first time in his life, he left with. He was taking anything with him. Not because he chose to, but because there was nothing left he could take. Inside the apartment, Amara didn't move for a long time after the door closed. Then her knees finally gave slightly. Not collapsing, just releasing. Daniel caught her gently before she fully dropped. She didn't cry loudly. There was no dramatic breakdown. Just quiet shaking breaths of someone who had held pain inside her body for too long. And for the first time, no one punished her for it. Outside, the Mafia boss stood alone on the street. The wind was colder than before. His phone buzzed again. But he didn't check it. For once, the empire didn't feel like it belonged to him. It felt like something he was standing outside of. And inside his chest for the first time he understood a terrifying truth. She hadn't been taken from him. She had left him behind.